Okay, so what are we doing today? So in the previous lesson, we were dealing with finding, using the cos rule. And basically the cos rule looked something like this, like a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. And now that is a statement of the cos rule where the side is written by itself. So give me a thumbs up in the chat if you are familiar with the cos rule written like that from the previous lesson. Just want to see that everybody is, so this is a basic statement of the cos rule. And what I want to point out is that the yellow side is the subject of the formula. Now, in today's lesson, we are going to look at how do we use the cos rule to find an angle in a triangle when you are given three sides. So if we look at the drawing, I'm giving you all three sides of the triangle. So if that is the case, I want you, so this is what my first challenge for you is, I want you to write out a statement of the cos rule which involves the angle that I'm trying to find. So the angle I'm trying to find is A over here. I want you to write out a statement of the cos rule that involves the cos of A. But I want you to put numbers in instead of variables. So over to you guys. I want to see if you can write that out for me in the chat. And then after you've written it out, or approximately written it out, I will get going and we'll talk about when we're trying to find angles as opposed to sides, how should we do things differently, if we should do things differently. So I'm basically asking, what are the values that I need to include? I'll give you one hint. I'll start by saying 7 squared equals. Now, when we use the cos rule, we tended to always look for two sides and an included angle. And so that's why I knew that I would start by writing down 7 squared, because then I would involve the angle that I wanted. So I should get 7 squared. And then who would like to tell me what the next two numbers are? Maybe someone can raise their hand to tell me how do I read off the rest of this line? So Rachel, I see your answer and it looks good to me. Loretta, you're on the right track. I think you may have just missed out one little part, but you're almost there. So I think basically what we have is 7 squared is equal to 8 squared plus 5 squared. But now we have minus 2 times 8 times 5 times the cos of angle A. So in the last lesson, we were really focusing on saying, okay, well, if we want to find this side, we'd start by writing this out. And then we would say, well, it's two sides in the included angle, and we'd write it like this. So now the problem is, guys, if I want to solve for the cos of A, I have to do a whole bunch of complicated, not complicated, but I have to do a bit of extra work. And I'm going to do this bit of extra work, but there's definitely a faster way to do it. But let's start by doing this. Let me start by moving this whole negative term to the other side. So I'm going to get, and let us move the 7 squared to the opposite side. So we're going to get 2 times 8 times 5 times the cos of A equals 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 7 squared. And I want to just see in the chat, give me a thumbs up if you see what I've done there. Because I want to see, I don't want to lose you. This is going to get easier later in the lesson, but I just want to ask you, are you following what I'm doing? I'm trying to get the cos A by itself. So I moved the entire term over here to the other side. and then I moved the 7 squared across. Now we have another problem. We still have this irritating 2 times 8 times 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the cos of A equals 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 7 squared over 2 times 8 times 5. And the reason I've done that is on this side, the 2 times 8 times 5, it's a multiplication. So if I bring it to the other side, it has to be a division. Okay. Now, I want you guys to get me a number. So what is 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 7 squared, blah, 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 over 2 times 8 times 5? I want a number. So for those who are feeling a bit lost, don't worry. I know this is a bit odd at first. It's going to get easier later in the lesson, but I just want to emphasize why I do the second example the way I do by doing this. So I don't want the answer. I want the value, and you get 0.5. So basically, you get the cos of A equals 0.5. Now, once you've got the cos of A is 0.5, you can then find the angle A. And the way you do that is you go basically shift cos or cos minus 1 of whatever the number is. Now, what I'm going to suggest is in later times, instead of putting the number in like 0.5, just hit the answer key to bring back the value that you got earlier in the calculation. What is the angle? What is the value of the angle that you get? So you should be getting 60 degrees. Now, guys, if you look at this question, just give me okay, I see good news happening in the chat for the most part. And if you haven't got 60, it's not a problem. But let's just look at this. This is quite a long way to get the angle. And I want to ask someone to come online and tell me why did this take so long? What was the part of this process that took so long? I just want to almost get a human opinion on this. Like, we've got the answer, we used the cos rule, but it felt like hard work. It felt like harder work than we've had to do before. What's making it so hard? Who would like to raise their hand and just give me a sense of what's making it so hard here? Or put it in the chat if you like, but I'd love if you raise your hand just to give us a human opinion. What makes this hard? Well, we didn't have the angle, yes. But if you think about the mathematics, Andilio, like where was most of my energy going to? It was rearranging the equation. Yeah. It felt like a lot of work. Like if I think of all the other rules that we've learned about, we didn't normally have to do this much rearranging. And so the reason we had to do rearranging is the way we wrote the cos rule was in the form where we started out where we wrote it where the side was the subject of the formula. And what I think we need to do is we need to look at the pattern here and then use the pattern to find a new way of writing out the cos rule where the angle we're looking for, the cos of A, is we get there from step 1. So basically, how can we get to this step straight away is what I want to show you. So give me a thumbs up if you understand what I mean. Like, how do we get to the red block straight away? Like, how do we, if we want to find an angle, we start by writing the cos of that angle. We don't have to write the cos rule in a complicated or the sides way first. Okay, so how do we do that? The way we do it is we look for patterns in the way we did this. And the only pattern that I think is very, very important is to notice if I'm trying to find an angle, the side that is opposite the angle I'm trying to find is going to always be a negative. So if I think about the angle A, what's the side opposite that? It's 7. Notice how the 7 is a negative in this calculation. Notice how the two other sides that are not opposite are just squared and added together. And notice how on the bottom, you've got 2 times the length of 2 sides, but those sides are not opposite the angle that you want to find. So that is the thing that we're going to memorize today and then extend. So basically, when I start and I'm writing down the cos of an angle I want to find, I know it's always going to have this structure, and I'm going to start by writing out the side that is opposite it as a negative. The bottom is always going to have that structure. The top is always going to have the other 2 sides squared and added together. So we go 8 squared plus 5 squared. And then on the bottom, it's going to be the 2 sides that are not opposite the angle we want. So it's going to be like that. So that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but if we practice that, it will get easier. And the main clue that I know is going to help you is remembering the side is opposite the angle you're looking for. Okay, so take a screenshot if you need to now. We're going to practice one from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to give you this particular triangle, and notice how we've been given 3 sides. So we have all 3 sides, and we want to find an angle, and we're going to use the cos rule. So you're going to start by writing the cos of theta equals, and you're going to write it as a fraction. I want you to type out for me in the chat, what is the top line going to be? Let's start with that. We'll call that part A. And then once you've got part A, what about part B? What does the second part look like? And remember, the goal is eventually to find this thing called theta. Okay. Otherwise, if someone can even give me A, you can raise your hand, and I will allow you to read out your answer A, and we can work from there. So just pop your hand up if you're willing to share your answer there. So what is the side opposite this? It's just going to be this one. So Anand Bob, I see your answer. I think I agree. Who would like to give us the answer for A, the first part of this question? Come, young guy, I know you want to share. Or maybe Seth. Okay, so I see Anand Bob has given. I agree. I would start by going minus 6 squared for that bit. And then I would go 8 squared plus 11 squared to get that. So that's the top line. Now, what's the bottom line going to be? Who would like to share their answer? Aha. So could we unmute? Is it David? There we go. Okay. David, go ahead. What do you think the second line is going to be?
So the second line, I think it's going to be 2
Yes.
2 bracket 8
Yes.
and 6 inside.
Okay, not 6. Why is it not 6? Because 6 is opposite the angle we're finding. It's going to be 11. Because if you look at the drawing, you always put the 2. It's almost like, the 2 sides in the included angle. It's those 2 arms that are around the angle that always go at the bottom. Awesome. Thanks, David. I really appreciate your help. Now, the second step is we're going to need to get a number for this, and it may be a bit of a messy decimal. So could we pop that in the chat? What are we going to get if we go? And I would probably use the fraction button here to help me. My calculator has gone dead here. So I type the fraction button and I get 8 squared plus 11 squared minus 6 squared on the top. And on the bottom, I have 2 times 8 times 11. And then I hit equals. And some people will have 149 over 176. Or if you hit the SD button, you get quite 0.8465, so on. Here's the thing, guys. When you get a long decimal, you don't want to lose decimal places. So what I would suggest is you can store this value. When you hit equals, it gets stored in the answer value. Or if you hit the SD button, you just get this fraction, which you can use. Both are fine. The last step is to then go, theta will equal shift cos, or cos minus 1 of the value that you had above. But I would just use the answer key to help me. Instead of having to type it out again, I just go, I already pressed equals. It's sitting in my calculator's memory. Now I go shift cos answer key, close brackets. And what do you get? I get 32.16. This is what I get, 32.16. If you didn't get that, it's just because you are losing decimals at that point. And so what I would suggest you to do is, after you've done this calculation and you hit equals, remember this value is stored in the answer key button. If you look at my calculator, I've got an answer key. If you can see it, it's there. Or you can hit the SD button on your calculator and write down 149 over 176, because that's easier to type out. But I prefer the answer key button. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you feel okay. Give me a thumbs down if you feel a bit unsure. Let me know how it's going. We just need to practice this a good couple of times. Once you get it, it actually goes much quicker. Okay, and remember, if you want to ask questions while we're doing it, is a great time to do it. Okay, let's have a little multiple choice question. You are given the following question, and you need to find the correct value for the cos of C. You go ahead and choose there. Sihawa, there was no surd on 149. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, there wasn't. Okay. Which of these 4 do we think it is? And remember what we said, if we're looking for a particular angle, cos of C, that is the angle that we start with. Now, it's quite important we recognize what is the side that's opposite that. And that might give us some clues. Okay. Give a little bit more time. So I think straight away I know it can't be these 2, because I'm looking for a minus 5 squared. And I see it could be these, but then I know at the bottom, I need to have the 2 sides that are not opposite the angle. And so the correct option is going to be B. That is the correct option. Nicely done, my people. Nicely done. Okay. Let's keep, I think those are too easy for you, so I'm going to leave them out for now. Let's do one of these ones. Okay. Which of the following is correct, the correct equation based on the diagram on the right? Take a moment to think about it. Sometimes these questions have a little tricks thrown in, so make sure you think through it pretty carefully. So whenever I'm using the cos rule, I always have to find my angle to help me get a sense of what's going on. So cos x equals, and I know it's going to have these like a fraction form. And then I know that I'm going to have a minus 13 squared. Now, I agree the cos of 13 doesn't really make much sense, so that's gone. And I was looking for minus 13 squared, so it feels like all of these options are gone, and the correct option is going to be D. Yep. Looks good to me. Guys, if there are any questions, oh, sorry, my mouse got carried away. Please don't be afraid to raise a question in the chat. But from what I can see, things are going quite nicely. And so we can keep going along. Okay. Let's do one more of these. I quite like these multiple choice questions, just to kind of make you think about. So which of the following is a correct final step before inputting into your calculator? Which of the 4 steps do you think is going to be to show the final step here? It's a bit more cluttered, I know, but just keep calm and think, what will the final step going to be? So I still know my angle. I see, says the blind man. I see. Okay, lots of C's coming through. I like minus 12 squared is definitely good. 11 squared plus 3 squared, 2 times I agree with you. It is definitely this one. Like this one is not, you need to have the cos minus 1 basically. It was the giveaway. So that is basically the correct one. So let's see. Okay. Let's do one more before the break. So I want you, I'm not assisting you here. You are going to find me the angle RST. Which of the 4 options is the value RST? And I want you to choose the correct one, A, B, C, or D. Over to you guys. Now, notice how there's a couple of decimals floating around. So that does make it a bit more interesting. How would we work this one out? So we first have to know what that is. And then we know that's kind of important. So I see lots of people are saying, so let me write this out. So I'm just going to say the cos of RST. And in order to do that, I'm going to go, I know I've got my minus 6.4 squared. I've got my 7.0 squared up here, plus 8.9 squared here. And on the bottom, I've got 2 times 7 times 8.9. And then if I punch all that into my calculator, I should be getting, in fact, I can see, yeah. Let me just make sure there's no silly mistakes here. C's keep them coming through, guys. I just want to double check myself. Plus 8.9 squared minus 6.4 squared over 2 times 7 times 8.9. And I get quite a messy looking decimal here. It's going to be 0.7002 blah, blah, blah. But luckily, because I have that value stored in my calculator, to get the final value for RST, all I do is I go cos minus 1 or shift cos, whatever the answer key was, which basically has stored this value. And I should get shift cos answer 44.55, which is C. All right. So guys, you've done really, really well. And we need to make an investment in ourselves. So you know what's coming next. We are going to stretch it out. And I would love for you to turn your cameras on so I can see your lovely faces. And I'm going to stand up and stretch. And I'm going to ask Lebor to please tell me those students who are really going the extra mile with their stretching so that they are investing in themselves. Oh, okay. Now I must remember to put my camera. Oh, I'm going to do I think a tricep stretch. There we go. Oh, that feels, oh guys, that feels fantastic. I can't tell you, you're missing out.
Come on, guys.
All that day of sitting, your body's like, thank you for investing in me.
I see David getting in on the stretch. Letu, Lorraine.
Oh, that feels good. Cheapers. Guys, I think we should probably tell your teachers at school to make you stretch more often too.
Definitely.
Oh, I feel alive. Here we go.
Andile also joined in.
Okay, so guys, tell me how that stretch felt in the chat. Was it good for you? Give me a thumbs up if you felt good after that stretch. Give us a thumbs down if somehow the stretch made you unhappy. Okay, awesome. All right, brain break time. Here's your brain break. Short and sweet. I know you think 8 plus 11 is 19. I agree most of the time it is, but not today. So what do you think 8 plus 11 is in the context of this pattern? Oh, you know it, Rachel. Oh, you did. You're quite right. Who else can see? Do you want to give them a hint, Rachel, in the chat, or do you want to come online and quickly just give a comment where you can give them a hint? So, Amina, you're on the right track. It is bigger than 19. I'll tell you that. I'll say this. It's always helpful to look back in your life. That is my tip. That is my that is my hint. It's always helpful to look back in life. Okay, so how about I'll give you a clue with some boxes.
I think someone got it in the chat, Mr. S.
Okay, let's have a look. Yes, Andile, I think I agree with you. What do you think the answer is going to be if you look at those blocks? So I don't think it's 96, guys. I must be honest. I think the pattern that I see is that one, that if you take, yes, I would say 21 plus 8 is 29 plus 11, and that is going to be 40. Yeah. So that is the brain break for today. And it just kind of, I suppose, strictly speaking, this isn't mathematically correct. It's just the idea of a pattern that you are repeating, and it's trying to find that pattern as we go. All right, let's go back to what we were doing. And yeah, let's just see on some different ways that we can do this. Let's find, okay, let's do this one. Okay, so you have to find for me angle XZY, which is XZY. Why is my brain taking so long to catch up? Okay, this one over here. Find that angle. I want you to fly solo now. So first step, you know what to do. Second step, you know what to do. Third step, you should have an answer. Let's see what you guys can come up with. And if there are questions, guys, also now is a great time while everyone's working to raise your hand, and we'll gladly address any questions that you have. Okay, so I was thinking the cos of z is, I'm going to put my minus 17 squared. Actually, I need a bit more space here. So let me draw my fraction line, because I know that always comes first. Do that. And then I know I have 20 squared plus 22 squared over 2. And what are those? They're going to be 20 and 22. So then, what is your answers, guys? Let's keep them coming in. So what I would recommend is whenever you use the cos rule in this form, it feels like the fraction button on your calculator would be super helpful. And so there's two ways of, what's decimal? So it's 0.67. Okay, it's going to keep going. I'm just going to use the answer key. Or what you could do, guys, on your calculator, there's a button that says SD. And so you can change it to the SD form. And sometimes that's a quicker way of, if you don't want to use the answer key memory, it's more accurate to write it like that sometimes. Then you can save it. But you know, I recommend the answer key. So we get shift, cos, answer, and I get 47. So my Z value is 47.46 degrees. Okay, 47.46. And if I look at the chat, things are looking good. Okay, now I'm throwing a curveball at you guys because you're doing so well. I feel like I need to mix it up. I want you to find me the angle Y over here in this corner.
Mr.
So,
S,
yeah.
can you take a question from Nizol?
I can. I will in a moment. So guys, I want you to all try and find me the angle Y while I answer this question, and then we'll talk about that in a moment. So we're actually finding a second angle, but now you're going to have to adjust some stuff to go along. Okay, Nizole or Nizol, what's your question?
Sir, can you show the formula that you used? Because I wasn't here for the first part of the.
Okay. So let me zoom in a little bit to make a little bit of extra space. So the cos rule has two ways of being written. The one way of writing the cos rule is where you write it in terms of sides, which I did at the very beginning of the lesson, which is that one. But that's not the one we focused on today. The one we focused on today is whatever angle we write, then we write the cos of that angle to start. And then what we have is the side that is opposite that angle, which is, in this case, it's a squared. It's going to be minus a squared. In this particular original example, it was the 17. And then the other two sides are just going to be there, squared and hanging out. And then on the bottom, I'm going to have 2 times the length of two sides. And those two sides are just going to be the sides that are not opposite the angle I'm interested in, which is going to be B and C. And so what I'm using in this question is basically that formula. Does that help a little bit, Nizola? I know that was very quick, but does that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so you're going to see me use this. The main idea to point out is that when you say an angle, the cos of A, the side that is negative, which is always going to be, it's the little a that's opposite the big A angle, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's try and get the answer for the angle y. So here we're going to say the cos of y equals, I'm going to draw my fraction line. I'm then going to say I know that opposite the y is 22, so it's going to be minus 22 squared. So that's because of this is opposite that. Then the other parts are quite easy. It's 17 squared plus 20 squared. Okay, if you could just hit mute all there. 2 times 17 times 20. And then if some of you may want to do this in one step, so what you can do on your calculator with the fraction button is you can actually go, but I worry that you make a silly mistake and you lose partial marks, but you can go at this step, shift cos, and then put the whole fraction inside of that bracket. And so in this scenario, I'm going to do that. So 17 squared plus 20 squared minus 22 squared over 2 times 17 times 20. The only thing about this is it fills your screen up a lot and it feels like it's not as reliable, but let's see. I get, if I do it in one step, I get 72.45. However, having marked matric exams, I really know that students, you don't want to lose partial marks. If you show you're working out as you go, if you have a bad day and you make a silly mistake, if you've shown me this step and you've shown me a second step in between, you'll only lose 1 mark at the end if you've made a silly calculator error. Whereas if you go straight to the answer, you leave more ambiguity. Okay, 72.45. Give me a thumbs up if you're feeling good so far. Give me a thumbs down if we're going a bit fast. Just want a quick reality check from the people in the classroom, since I can't see all your lovely faces. Okay. Well then, let us continue with a slightly harder one. So, I want to start by asking you, calculate the smallest angle in the triangle. However, I'm not going to give you too much more information. So maybe someone in the class can help tell us which angle is the smallest, given that this is all the information we've been given. Who would like to assist us in trying to figure out, like, okay, cool, the smallest angle, but which of the 3 angles is going to be smallest? There's 3 of them. Aha. I do see a hand. Rachel, I see your hand is up. Would you be able to give us a hint?
So I think it's the angle opposite the 9 centimeters.
Okay, I agree with you. And so, Rachel, do you know that the smallest angle is always opposite the smallest side? Have you heard that before?
Yes.
So it's true. The smallest angle will be opposite the smallest side. The 9 is the smallest. Do you know where the biggest angle would be, just for out of curiosity?
So opposite the 17 centimeters.
Yeah. So the biggest angle would be opposite the biggest side. And so that's an important idea. Thank you, Rachel. That was awesome. Okay, well then I want everyone to find me the smallest angle in this particular triangle. We'll call it, let's call it angle A, because that seems easy. Let's go with that. So I want to see a few more answers in the chat. What do we think the angle A is? Okay, a couple of answers coming through. Let's keep them coming. I'm pretty sure that that would be a good first step. And then that would be another good first step. So the cos of A would be 29 over 34, or in decimal, it will be quite messy. It'll be 0.85, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to, what the ellipse does, it just says this carries on. I'm then going to go shift cos, and then I'm going to hit my answer key, or I could put 29 over 34 if I wanted to do that. That would also give me the answer. And you should get 31.47 degrees. 31.47. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to start to use the cos rule questions mixed in with the other types of questions. So you guys, I feel like you've mastered cos rule. But now what happens if it gets mixed in with other questions? Are you game for a bit of a remix? We start to remix some of the questions together, where we might have to use the sine rule and the area rule and stuff like that. I think we are ready for something a little bit. Let's see, what do I got here? The distance, I can do that one. No, let's do not that one. Okay, I like this one. Yes, let's do this. Okay. So I'm doing a remix question. What I'm saying is I'm giving you the 3 sides of a triangle, but I'm not asking you for an angle, although possibly you'll need to do it. You need to find the area of this triangle. And I want to give you a minute or so to try and figure out a strategy for this. And then I would love anybody who has an idea of how we might be able to do it to put their hand up. But just take a moment. What tools do we have in the toolkit that we could use to help us with area? And what do we need to use those tools? And then, yeah, I kind of want you to think about this one. And then anybody who maybe has an idea of the approach they would use, if you could raise your hand, because I know this is going to cause students to be a little bit like, huh? What's going on? But think of me as the gym instructor who's like, okay, guys, let's give 5 more. Let's push ourselves. I'll write down. Back in lesson 2, which seems like a long time ago, we learned about something called the area rule. And it can often be written as a half AB times the sine of C. Now, how you use that information is up to you, but I think it might be helpful. Who has a strategy? Okay, who would like to raise their hand to propose an idea for how to do this? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to find the angle, or it's not the angle, we're trying to find the area of this whole triangle. And to do that, I think we can use the area rule. The problem is the area rule needs 2 sides and an included angle. And so you need to find an angle in this triangle before you can apply the area rule. I see someone's hand is up. Whose hand is up?
Lutando.
You want to unmute Lutando?
Lutando?
Can you, Lutando, how would you do this?
You'll first find the angle, one of the angles, and I would say we find the smallest one.
Okay. So which, I put letters here. Which is the smallest?
The one opposite 8 centimeters.
Okay, so you're going to find this angle. Why is it helpful to find this angle? What are you going to do after that?
You're going to use the area rule.
Okay.
Find the area of the triangle.
Okay, so once you've got that angle, you can then use the area rule. That sounds like a good strategy to me. So let's, thank you. That was super helpful. I think a lot of students will feel better oriented. So let's use the cos rule because I've got three sides. I'm going to go the cos of C, and I'm going to go, okay, well, I know this is minus 8 squared, and then this is going to be 10 squared plus 9 squared, and then this is going to be 2 times 10 times 9. If you feel comfortable now, you could just go shift cos and put this whole thing. And I know if you don't feel comfortable doing this and it's overwhelming, don't do it. Do an extra step. But those who feel very confident, you could actually get to the answer in one step by going straight from there. It's up to you guys. What do we get for that angle C? I want to see what we get for the angle C. So shift cos 10 squared plus 9 squared minus 8 squared over 2 times 10 times 9. And what I get is I get 49.45 and so on. Now, you are allowed to round off to 2 decimal places here. So you get 49.46 actually. Although you've got the okay, so there will be some leniency here. You can use this 49.46, or you could use this, the value stored in your memory. And where possible, use the value stored in memory, but we'll be okay with both. So how do I use the area rule? The area rule says, if I want to find the area of any triangle, I go a half, and then I go the length of one side, the length of the other side, and the sine of the angle in between. So the sides that are on the one side of the angle we're looking for are 10 and 9. And then I'm going to use the answer key, or I'll use 49.46. And that will find me the area of my entire triangle. So I want to see, what are you guys getting? And if you chose another angle, you know what's amazing is that if you found another angle and you did this, it would still work out. So let's see what I get for my answer. A half times 10 times 9 times the sine. If I use the memory button, so there'll be 2 different answers. The one with the memory answer one, it'll be 34.19. In fact, 197, it's going to round off to 2, 34.2. And that would be centimeters squared. If you used 49.46, it would be 0.5 times 10 times 9 times the sine of 49.46. In that case, it'll be 34.19. Oh, it gives you the same answer. So 34.2 in both cases. And so the area of this triangle is 34.20 centimeters squared. All right, now I'm going to call it at that point for the lesson. Guys, what are we going to do next week? So next week's lessons are all going to be about, we've learned 3 different rules. We've learned the area rule, we've learned the sine rule, and we've learned the cos rule. Often when you do these questions in exams and tests, you have to use them all together at once. And so the type of questions that we'll do in the next 2 sessions are going to be questions something like this one, where you have to work with 2 triangles that are next to each other, and we're going to get comfortable pulling out the correct tool for the correct situation. And so that's what next week is going to be. Lebo, I think it's time for us also to give the quiz question to the students. So guys, it's just a short quiz tonight. It's like 5 questions, and Lebo is going to put the link in the chat. And yeah, I thought you did really well. We made good progress in basically, what did we do today? We focused on writing the cos rule, where the angle was the subject of the formula. That's what we practiced today. And that will save you a lot of time, as opposed to using the formulation of the cos rule, where you write the sides first. Okay. Once you have, if you've got no more questions, then I'm going to send you off to do the quiz and wish you well. I enjoyed teaching you. And then for those students who have questions, I'm going to stay on the line. Okay. It was good being with you guys today. Okay, Nizole, what is your question?
Sir, can you just write down like all the rules that we've done so far so I can
Okay.
just screenshot them?
Yeah, okay, so I've actually got them on another screen. So the rules that we've done, and we're going to talk more about this in the next lesson, but I mean, this is what we've learned, although today we learned how to write the cos rule where the angle stands by itself. So maybe this is a little bit overwhelming. Basically, you only need, that's the sine rule where the angle is written on top. And then actually, in fact, I'm going to continue with this in the next lesson, but if you want to take a screenshot, that gives you a bit of a summary of how it works. Okay. All right. So take a screen, Nizole. I'll give you 3 more seconds, and then I'm going to go back.